Welcome in the last episode in English with Joël Miller, designer at Figma. He will tell us about his design process and share us some tips to grow as a designer. Enjoy the episode. Parlons Design saison 6 est supporté par son partenaire privilégié, la KKTOS Academy. La nouvelle façon de se former au design. Can you share with us the design process you use at Figma on the project you are currently working on?
Yeah, sure. So we tend to work as designers. You tend to probably work on maybe one big project, and then I guess you might have another smaller project. Auto layout was considered one of these really big projects because it touches on so many different aspects of the editor itself, but it just seems like the small feature, but it actually kind of has knock-on effects to lots of different areas. And so there were three different parts of auto layout that parts of the UI, that auto layout kind of affected. There's the layers panel on the left-hand side and the ordering of that. There's the canvas, so the canvas interactions, what happens when you drag things in and out of auto layout frames, what happens when you hover on things. And then there's also the properties panel itself. So what do the controls look like? And what's the information architecture of that? So that was kind of touching all of the editor completely. And then also there's even the inspect panel side of it. So how do we represent auto layout in code as well? And that side of it too. Originally there was one designer working on this, which is Oscar. He sort of started the research phase of this, and he, did some initial exploration, and we quickly realized that, there were so many things that we wanted to add to auto layout, like absolute positioning, a lot of just usability improvements, that it quickly became too big for one designer. And so at that point, I sort of came onto the project as well. And then Oscar and I, we sort of co-designed this project. So we worked, which is actually quite rare. So we don't really have designers that co-design on projects so much. I think we're starting to do it now as the product is getting bigger and bigger. And also we have FigJam as well. So you have to think about two products, not just one. But yeah, Oscar and I were co-designing on auto layout, and we decided to sort of split up the work. So I sort of focused more on the properties panel side of things. Oscar sort of looked at the canvas interactions and the canvas visualizations and things like that. We basically just broke down the project, but by feature set, and then the priorities and sort of which area did it quite cross over into, and then who would be responsible for that. And then it was just any other design project. So we did some explorations. We also ran design crits, so getting some feedback from the rest of the team. We did some. Then we had a really rough early version of the auto layout that we wanted to test. The one way we tested it is I actually built this really complex Figma prototype to do some user tests with, and we had them use the old version of auto layout and then a new version. And I just kind of had to make the canvas really interactive to make it feel like it was actual feature, because it was a lot quicker than actually getting engineering to build it. And it was pretty successful. It worked pretty well, but then we realized that we didn't really want to go with this design direction. So we wanted to do something that was kind of similar to the FigJam toolbar, but the contextual one. So if you drag a sticky into FigJam and then you click on the sticky on the canvas, this little black toolbar pops up, and those are the controls that you can use to sort of manipulate the object. And we thought this would be really nice for auto layout, because one of the problems we've been hearing about auto layout is that people don't know what they can do with an auto layout frame. So we thought maybe we take that pattern from FigJam and bring it over to Figma. So if you click on an auto layout frame, this black toolbar could pop up and the controls could be in there. So this is what I built the prototype for. And we did some user testing with that. And then we saw it was super successful, but then we thought it was a bit too intrusive for the editor. So we sort of went back and redesigned it. And then it evolved into what you see today in Figma. But yeah, when we had the design and we thought, okay, we're ready to build this now, we just worked really closely with engineering, and we worked in a really agile way. They were, we sort of had the mentality of saying, let's just prototype this out, put it on our staging environment, and see how it feels, and be totally okay with just throwing it away if it doesn't feel right. And luckily, we didn't really have to throw too much away. I think we did a pretty good job of user testing and user research to inform our decisions. And it was really doing like small design tweaks and small interaction tweaks in the prototyping, like with engineering phase. It wasn't really like starting from scratch or anything like that. So we worked probably for maybe like 2-3 months, really close with engineering, just refining auto layout, testing it, refining, testing it, doing some more user testing. And then eventually I think we gave it to some companies for like beta testing as well. And so we got some feedback from them as well. And then, yeah, we just sort of kept refining it all the way up until config when we actually released it. And yeah, we saw that it's been pretty successful, pretty good launch. And it seems to be, more people seem to be using auto layout, and more people seem to be understanding how to use it as well, which is great.
Yeah, really good. So there is a big part of prototyping Figma inside Figma at the beginning to check the concept. Then there is a pre-development on a staging environment to test the idea, but at this step, the idea is well defined and there will be some little updates, but not big changes.
Yeah.
A lot of tests with many different users to pre-beta and then config. About the users, you share the prototype to these test sessions. How did you select them? Is there someone at Figma who manages the user research? How did that happen?
Yeah. So I'll start with the first question. How do we select them? So Auto Layout 4 was really focused on making it easier for like what we called like novice users of auto layout. So people that don't really understand how to use it, people that were seeing auto layout and then just breaking it and using non-auto layout frames, like normal frames instead. So we were like, we need to focus. Yeah, we've all been there. I used to do it as well. So we started with those people and we sort of like targeted novice users. So we asked them a lot of questions like, how familiar are you with auto layout through a survey? Do you understand auto layout? How does it make you feel? Things like this. And with that user group, that's who we did the testing with. And the second part of that is we have a research team as well. So the research team sort of worked with us to help figure out how to ask the best questions, how to sort of reach out to people, whether it be a survey or emails and things like that. So with every sort of round of user testing, we work really closely with the research team and they'll sort of like take notes and watch the interviews as well themselves and sort of then take all the findings and condense it into some kind of report which summarizes everything. So it's really, really valuable to have them actually.
Great. And a lot of collaboration in this distributed team.
Yeah, exactly.
Great. At the beginning, you also told about represent auto layout in code, which is a feature in Figma. It's part of the design work, but how do you manage to work on it? Because it requires a lot of code knowledge.
Yeah, so it's mainly I think engineers. Well, it's a lot of design problem as well, but also we get a lot of feedback from the engineering team. So one of the things with auto layout was that if you selected a frame, and then you went to the inspect panel, it would show things like the XY position. So saying like top and bottom or left and right or something. And then it would also show absolute position. And absolute position is actually like the opposite of auto layout. Absolute position is like you can place anything freely on the canvas. Auto layout is like it's defined depending on like where it sits in order and things like that. So it was kind of conflicting with what like auto layout was sort of conflicting with code itself. So sorry, no, that's not right. Let's start again. The inspect panel was showing, or when you select an object on the canvas, when you went to the inspect panel, it was showing things like absolute position, which is kind of the opposite of auto layout. And it was also showing the X and Y position, which isn't really relevant when you're using auto layout. And so we had to think about how to improve that for developers as well, who were like collaborating with designers who were using auto layout. So we did things like instead of saying just the width or the height of the frame, we'd put in brackets like hug or fill to represent that it's sort of like a flex container, which is sort of like represents Flexbox a little bit. So developers understand like auto layout is kind of an iteration of Flexbox in code, basically. So we're trying to help communicate that auto layout is this thing that you know in code. And also we got rid of the things that said like absolute positioning and X and Y position because it just didn't make any sense. So it wasn't really like completely rewriting code or anything. It was more like adapting it, tweaking it to make it make more sense for developers who are collaborating with designers.
And about this proximity with Flexbox, with this behavior, which is used in many in the web development, but also in iOS or Android development, this idea of stacks. Did you use it as a constraint at the beginning of your design process, or did you abstract it? How did you work with this real world constraints?
Yeah, so auto layout is kind of like Flexbox, but Flexbox is really confusing to use, and a lot of developers don't remember all the names of what display flex means or what flex direction means, all this kind of stuff. It's kind of complicated. But I think initially, this is before I joined Figma, but they wanted to bring some of that power of Flexbox into the editor to make it feel more quick and efficient to use. But you can't just like dump Flexbox into Figma and then say, hey, here it is, here are all the controls. So the first version sort of focused on like buttons and things like that. So making, when you change the text in the button, it just grows and shrinks automatically depending on the text inside. And then also arranging lists. So if you add something to a list, the container like grows and also shrinks if you remove stuff from the list. So it was focused more on that at first. And then slowly we might take something else. So we took the fill container and then the hug contents, which is like when things you want an object to like fill its parent container, or you want it to like shrink to the content inside. And then also the alignment. So I want to position things in the center or to the top right or the bottom left or something like that. So that was the next part. And then the next part after that was sort of bringing more power, saying like things like absolute positioning or just better usability overall, and like try to like slowly add these things of Flexbox. But we didn't add the whole of Flexbox. So it's definitely an abstraction. It's sort of taking the parts that make sense at the time and then slowly releasing them once people have like fully understood how this small part works. So you can't just, it's sort of like incremental adoption, I guess. You used to like incrementally add parts and then wait for people to adopt it, and then they get sort of used to it, and then you add some more power on top of it. But you need to be careful not to like overwhelm. Otherwise, it will be too confusing. People won't know how to use it. And then you have the problem where people just don't use auto layout at all, which is also bad for collaboration with developers.
Yeah, it's kind of the same work than when you do translation vs localization. You can decide to do exactly the same thing without taking into account the constraints of your users and things like that. And really, in that case, you smartly localized the concept of Flexbox into a designer way to organize these ideas and these contents.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, just it's worth saying that the whole of the Figma editor is sort of like, it's kind of like CSS, but it's not the whole of CSS. It's like a subset of CSS, and that's how we approach it. So we take the parts that make sense from code and bring them into the Figma, but then we take the parts of the design tool which make sense and sort of like create these like abstractions. So it's never fully just a code or fully a design tool. It's sort of like this bridge in the middle.
Yeah, and it's what makes a big difference between Figma and the other apps. Some are really design focused with total abstraction of code behavior. Some others, like you told about Framer at the beginning, are really a translation of what we can do in code. We can do it in Framer, and we can even code in Framer. So Figma is kind of the right balance for the moment between both worlds.
Yeah, exactly.
So to continue, we talked about the success of this new auto layout. Currently, I love to work with tools like Amplitude to track the impact of our design. Do you leverage a lot the analytics at Figma to follow the impact of each update of each new feature?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we definitely do track how people are using the features, and like what percentage of users, what type of users, and things like that. It's really important to inform the design decisions. So we definitely do that. Each time we sort of have a hypothesis about how to improve something, we'll ask our data team, say, hey, can you put up some data on how people are using water layout? I'd love to find out this particular thing, or how often do people use this shortcut or that shortcut or whatever. I think that's it's really important to make sure that you do that, because it really does help to shape the future of the decision of the design tool, and also just helps you to get a good understanding of what people are using. And most of the time you might find that people don't actually use things the way you thought they did, or more things are more popular than you think as well. And obviously you can only take that with a grain of salt, because sometimes, data doesn't give you all the answers, but it definitely helps steer the direction.
Yeah. And are you involved in the process of setting up a tracking plan, like for auto layout or thing like that, or is it abstracted in a dedicated data team only?
Yeah, it's both. So we'll come up with some suggestions of maybe things that we want to track. So maybe we want to track how many people are pressing the button for absolute positioning, how many people are pressing things like padding on the canvas, to use those contextual pop-ups and things like that in the case of auto layout. And then we'll work with the data team to say, like, does this make sense? And they might come up with some suggestions to say, oh, maybe you want to think about this, or maybe you don't want to track this because it will, show too much data or something like that. So it's really a collaborative process of like understanding how to best get out the most out of that data and inform that decision. But we definitely have input into making those decisions.
Yeah, they are here to help you find the best solution, the most interesting things to track. But you are involved, and it's
Exactly.
really great as a designer to be involved in that and to better understand why we do these things and how it really impacts the life of our users.
Yeah, exactly.
So to end this podcast, I have some quick picks questions.
Okay.
It's quick question which attends a quick answer, but be free to develop if you find it interesting. Which was the most impactful things you learned at Figma?
I think the most impactful thing I've learned at Figma is how to present work and how to sort of do storytelling with work as well. So I think one of the most underestimated skills of a designer is how to communicate your work, how to create a narrative around your problem, and sort of like build a story around why it's important and how your design is going to solve this. And I think through doing things like design crits all the time, having to share your work and really spell out the context and make sure that the problem statement is super defined and the user groups are defined, the personas are defined, all this kind of stuff. It really helps you to practice that and really question your design in the first place and say, like, what's the real reason why we're doing this? Why is this important? Like, what pain is this actually solving? How does this really help Figma, the business, and all that kind of stuff? So I think just working at Figma and having to do that on a weekly basis, and even do product reviews with leadership, where they're even more critical about the points and making sure that you really nail this stuff down. It really helps me to sort of like nail that, I guess, like storytelling, communication aspect as well. And I think as well, another thing is just doing more public speaking. So like doing things like this podcast, going and talking with the community and doing some talks at Config and Schema. It's really, really helped me, I think, get better at just communicating overall and talking about design and things like that. So that's probably been the most impactful thing.
Your journey, your growing journey to being a better product designer continue well with Figma.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, always wanting to learn new things and try and get better at different things. And I think, Figma has given me a lot of opportunities and also helped me to practice and get better at some of the things I think I previously struggled with.
Cool. Another quick pick. What is your favorite Figma feature except the new auto layout?
That's a tough one. I really like the new Command F that's just launched. So that's just like a game changer. I think, if you're in a design system and you've got so many pages and so many components and you just can't find this like one icon that you're trying to look for, just Command F, search the icon, you can find it really quickly. And I really like the way that it like sort of pans around the canvas, and when you like select a different layer or something, I think there's so much detail that's gone into that project, and so many like just so much like skills gone into that. It's a really nice feature, and I think it's going to hopefully be really impactful for a lot of designers. And it's just really, it's kind of like a small thing. If you think about it, it's just like, oh, I just want to search for this thing. But search is just so complex. And I think the way that the team has done it it's been really good.
Absolutely. And in the storytelling you told us about just before was great on this feature. I discovered it by saying on Twitter, just try to press Command F. I was with one of my colleagues. I told him, try Command F. And it's a great way to discover a feature which is at the same time really advanced and really important in this tool. And at the same time, we are so used to it on many different software that it's at the same time basic and really advanced. So great example of a storytelling on a feature.
Yeah, for sure.
At the beginning, when we prepared this podcast, I wanted you to ask what is the next big Figma thing you are already working on, but you told me, no, we can't talk about it. Understand, it's secret. We will conclude with the last one, my favorite question. Do you have an advice for the upcoming designer on how to grow as a designer?
Yeah, for sure. I think one really great way to grow is to sort of try and build a network. So, reach out to people who you admire or who you think are in positions where you would like to be in the future, and just ask them for some advice. What I've found is that if you ask people for things, most of the time they're more than happy to help you. I have a lot of people that reach out to me on LinkedIn, and I try to answer every single email, give them advice and things like that, because I was in a position like that not so long ago, and I understand how overwhelming and how intimidating it can be to, figure out how am I going to get better? Like, where should I work and all this kind of stuff, and what's my portfolio like? And, it's kind of stressful. And so, yeah, definitely ask for people, because that network, as you get more experienced and you grow, those people will also get more experienced and they'll grow. They might be in like leadership positions in the future. And if you have a rapport with them, it creates more opportunities for you. But in terms of like how to grow like skill set and things like that, I think it's really important to make sure you like listen to the things that aren't just focused on design too. I think being a good product designer is being a good generalist. So that what I mean by that is saying that you're good at strategy, you have some good, obviously, visual design skills, but also you know how to work with engineers. You're good at like the storytelling thing, which I was talking about earlier. And you can learn most of these other things through like just general like product podcasts or books on product, or even like talk to engineers and understand how they want to work, and pick their brains, ask them what this means, or what this component thing means in React, or how do you want me to present the work and things like that. Or talk to a product manager and ask them about how do you learn about strategy, and how do you learn about how to like write a PRD or product document or something. So try and expand outside of just design, because all that stuff, all those skills will actually help you to be a better designer overall. Because a big part of being a designer is being able to collaborate with these different roles. And most of the time half the time you spent designing, but half the other time you spent talking to these other people, presenting your work, working with engineering, so that's really equally important.
Thank you a lot. Thank you for your time. It was really great. To end this episode, I will let you tell what you want to the listener, where they can find you, and any other thing, if you have any other thing to tell them. Thank you, Joel.
No problem. Thank you very much for having me. If people want to reach out to me, I'm on Twitter at Joel Talks Design. And if anyone has any questions about Figma or just wants some advice or anything, feel free to send me a message. I'm always open to talking to people and if I can, I'll even try and get in a quick call with people as well if they want some advice. So yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's been great.
Hope you did enjoy the discussion. Thanks a lot to Joël, it was a great moment. Next week, the episode will go back in French with new topics and ideas. Subscribe to Parlons Design on your favorite platform and see you next week. Salut!
Design.